Hello friends, and welcome to another installment of Deering Instructional Videos. I'm Hank Smith, and today we are going to discuss building solos by theme or thematically. What does that mean? Basically it means we're going to take the idea of the tune that we're focused on, and we're going to use that information to craft our solo. So it's not improvised, it's definitely not made up on the spot. You would script it, you could even write it down if you wanted to, but you could also use the theme itself just to inform your decisions as you go through the break. So the tune that we'll use is Blackberry Blossom because it's sort of a universal thing. Most people know it. They know a version of it one way or the other, and no matter what version you play, there's plenty of thematic information to work from. So you can use that melody and how you play it as the information, the primary source, I guess. The more versions of the tune you learn, or more techniques that you use to play the melody, one way or the other, the more information you have to kind of craft with. More raw material, tricks in your bag, if you will, and we can just sort of narrow in on a couple of things for the purposes of this video, but the sky's the limit, so don't feel as though it's limited to just what's happening here. The idea behind this video is to sort of serve as a jumping off point or a springboard for you guys to be able to play sort of thematically or be informed by the material that's already there in the tune. So Blackberry Blossom can be played a bunch of different ways, of course. And again, it doesn't really matter what way you learned it for the purposes of this. For example, if you learned it like one of these, or something to that effect, or if you learned it as a single string melody, or if you learned it as a chord melody like I did, so for the purposes of this here today, we're just going to go off of this one, this chord melody version. I'm going to play through the whole thing one time through, and then we're going to kind of talk about what thematically is happening in this tune. It's a pretty straightforward tune. It's a fiddle tune, which is why I kind of want to see if this is adaptable to other fiddle tunes or any music for that matter. So here we go. Here's Blackberry Blossom as a chord melody. Nothing fancy, no frills, nothing like that. Here we go. So, once again, pretty straightforward. In the A part, it's mostly, or it can be completely forward-backward rolls. In the B part, we get that little rhythmic variation on the E minor, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for the most part, what we're dealing with Blackberry Blossom is a descending G major scale. So we're walking down the G scale. But it turns around, right? So the first time through it has the A to D, and then the second time it's just the D to G. So if we just mimic that, first time, second time. So the first time just turns it around. We have an A in there to do that. Play the A part twice and the B part twice. A, B, B, standard fiddle tune form. So since we're using this chord melody version, let's just kind of look at the chords. So if you were going to like back up, do boom chucks or accompaniment on this tune, your placement, the chord voicings that you use can help inform how to approach a solo. So it sort of serves a dual purpose. You're not just using it for backup, but that can be like sort of a roadmap for where you're going to go with the solo once we kind of distill it down into something. So here are the chords: G, D, C, G, C, G, A, D. They're all right here between 7 and 12. G, D, C, G, C, G, D. Right? So what if we took this as sort of a jumping off point for our solo for the A part? And again, we'll talk about the B part in a second because there's some cool stuff happening there. But we have our chord voicings, and if we just reduced it to, on your right hand, top string, middle string, bottom string. So 1, 3, and 5. And we sort of like get rid of the stuff in the middle for right now. Or if you wanted to finish on a high note. So now let's maybe just, that was just pinches, let's apply a kind of a rolling action and think about the melody of the tune while we do this. And then maybe just add a little bit to it, because we're working within pretty limited parameters. So there's stuff you can do if you just wanted to keep these basic forms in place and just kind of explore other voicings for where the chords would go. You can do that. So pretty straightforward. Now, because we're leaving notes out, this gives you the opportunity to reharmonize perhaps some of them. So we started out this first chord as a G and then moved into D, even if we were doing it like this. So now what if you treated this, instead of a D chord, you treated it like a B minor, and then an A minor and G. So you have like this sort of thing happening. So it got a little fancy there, and all I did was keep walking up to get to the next chord, and that can be a thing too. You know, as you're going through this thematically, you're starting to think about your solo in terms of like, well, here are the raw materials, here's what's going on in the song. It's generally a descending major scale in the A part, so you could juxtapose that and do an ascending run using some of these combinations, and you don't even have to add anything fancy like a reharmonized note in the chord. It can just be this. Like, let's say you want to go up instead of down. And then maybe down then. So now we're up at this G, but again, we're just keeping it to these two, which works nicely. So that's one way to approach it. Now, what if we, again, we're coming from a place of a full chord voicing from your boom chuck. This was the origination point for all of this. So we can kind of like, all right, well, we've thought about this idea. Maybe you've exhausted all of the ways you want to try that. So we kind of go back to ground zero. We go back to our starting point with this original voicing inversion of G. And so now let's maybe focus, instead of having the voice lead on the high notes, we do it with the bass notes and see what we can do with that. Again, we're dealing with a descending major scale. So let's think about it like that first as we walk our bass line down on the 4th string and see what we can come up with. Okay, so if we started here, if we start in the high register and work our way down, and we think about just playing the inside strings, for example. So first of all, let's map out the chords where they lie here. Here's G, D, C, G, C, G, and then A, and then D. That's one way to do it. You can keep walking down. Each one is different, and you change positions accordingly so that you're not just playing in one shape the whole time. But what if we sort of change the way this chord looks? So this is a G, of course. So what if we played it like this? Puts the B note all the way up at the top, and here's the G. So My index finger is on the 17th fret, 4th string. My middle finger is on the 19th fret, 3rd string, and my pinky is on the 21st fret, all the way at the top. So now, if I play G like this and just sort of use this as my guide, because that's what we're going for our descending melody through the A part once and then again, you can do it like this. So I'm just rolling again. Thumb here on my right hand, my thumb is working the low string, index is working the middle string, and my pinky is working the top string. So they mostly stay put, and you can do forward roll, backward roll, but we're going to put emphasis on the bass line. So maybe we'll start with our thumb here, forward roll it. Oops. Using these shapes. So let me just explain a bit about what happened there. So here was the G that we talked about. And then if I go down one more to the F sharp and adjust accordingly, now I've moved my, from this original G starting position, my index is back a half step, my middle is back a whole step, and my pinky is also back a whole step. So now I'm positioned at 16, 17, 19 for a D7 chord, because here's the F sharp in the D, there's the 7, that's a C, and then all the way up here is the A. So that's your D chord without a D in it. But we follow our pattern, and then here's, you can make that a C7. That's kind of cool. And then you move back to D, C. I'm actually playing this like a, you could even make it. The notes are, we're at index fingers at the 9th, we're at the 10th fret here, and the 12th, so that's a C, an F, and a D. But again, we're still in scale, so even if we're not playing the exact chords in the tune, it's going to work over top of it because of all of it's all diatonic, it's all correct to the scale. So here's G again, and then I played an A7 like this. So normally here's A, and then if you were to make it a 7th chord traditionally, you would flat your index finger against the bottom 2 strings, put your middle finger here, and your ring finger here. But if we invert that and put the 7th here and the root note on the bottom, then it fits within our scheme. And then if you move these two back a half step, there's your D7 again, F sharp, C, A. So altogether we'd have a walk down that starts way up at this G and comes all the way down to the D7 chord here. And then of course on the turnaround it would end on a G. But let's change it a little bit. Let's see, we have a cool pattern thing happening here. This theme is working out really well with these shapes. So what if we started here? So what I'm going to do, instead of starting on the G, I'm going to start on an E minor, which sounds cool overlapped with G because of relative minor. Now, normally you would play your E minor like this. So we're going to keep this note. We're going to play the B here, and then the G up top. So let's see if we can make our descending solo work with the theme, and this starting here, so starting with E minor. So just some ideas for working with the theme that you're given. As long as you stay more or less diatonic, in other words, if you stay within the G major scale and your note choices are reflective of that, then you can't really go wrong. You can kind of mess with it in a bunch of different ways. Again, these are just ways to kind of get you started. and not necessarily hard and fast. You have to do it like this. Just play around with it. You might find different combinations, or a different geographic region of the neck is easier to do that kind of stuff. You can also weave it in with other pre-existing melodic licks and runs and things that you might already know. Descending major scale stuff will all fit in there. Ascending runs, all that kind of stuff is good. But if you try to keep the theme to the A part consistent with what's going on in the melody, as it is a descending run, then you can kind of it adds a lot more musicality, musical richness to what you're trying to play. So there's the A part, covered a couple different ways. Let's talk about the B part for a second. So we played the B part like this originally. And you'd repeat that. So what do we have going on in the B part? So you could take the same tack that you did with the A part, and maybe start here. There's again E minor, here's E minor. We'll keep the E, we'll play the B here, and then there's a high G in it. So if you kept the idea, obviously, it would do the same thing the other one did. So you could take this and move it up as a difference, a juxtaposition again, because everything was moving down before. That makes for a good solo. But let's think about what's happening in the B part rhythmically, because there is a cool thing that can be, that can be sort of overlooked, I guess. You're normally used to playing the melody. But this rhythm figure kind of breaks it up. So let's think about this for a second. That's pretty cool. It's got a little rock back on that. Back to forward, backward roll there. Sort of the standard fiddle tune ending. So what if we use this thing? Let's see. We have an E minor voicing here. We're going to combine the ideas. We're going to go up, ascend, as opposed to descend from the A part. But we're also going to try to use this. So if we try to imitate that in each of the voicings of E minor. So in other words, you could even, if you kept going, even though that's not exactly, the notes aren't the same each time. Here is just going from D to E, whereas here it's going from F sharp to G on the bottom end. So all I'm doing is taking my, barring this now with this finger here and adding it back. And then here, same idea, just barring the bottom two to get that half step. So let's see if we take our B part. And then here's your B7 chord. So pretty straightforward. And then let's keep going. And then your standard fiddle tune ending. Whatever, you could really kind of back out of it however you wanted to in that moment. So we took the thematic idea from the B part, which is that rocking back and forth kind of motion. And so you're using the thematic information from the B part, the part that makes the bit unique, is that rhythm change. Because before we're all forward, backward rolls, everything is eighth notes, we're just humming along. But now we have the introduction of quarter notes. So why not use those quarter notes? Why not keep that same rhythm figure there? And that is also thematically linked to what's going on. So Again, there's a lot of different ways. You could do it like we did the A part, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or whatever. But this whole... kind of serves the melody a little bit more in that regard. So just a few ideas to kind of get you started on ways to approach different fiddle tunes. Now, if I were to play this Blackberry Blossom in a different way to begin with, if I played it in more the melodic style or the single string style, then that might also inform what I'm doing in a break. I might want to keep it all single string, or having something that's very different from technique 1 to technique 2, but still using the theme is useful. So maybe you do play the tune like a single string melody, but then your break is in the style of this sort of like kind of moving bass, voice leading, descending scale line. I don't think I'm going to be able to play it that fast, but... just some ideas, just trying to keep it more or less thematically linked. This way, if you have some sort of boundaries up, then you can kind of be creative within those boundaries more effectively, and keep things the same, or keep things related, not the same, but keep things related to the theme. So I hope this helps. Stay tuned for another part of this. We're going to do use Blackberry Blossom as a guinea pig for a couple of different things. So maybe consider this part 1, and thank you so much for watching. See you soon.